All right, what's going on, fellas, man? This is Abdel back on Del Tales, man. We had a great night with UFC Tampa in this fight night. In case you didn't watch it, there's definitely a couple of fights that I wanted to talk about, so let's get right into it. The first one we're going to talk about is Jacoby and Petrino. Man, if you ask me personally, it just seems like Petrino was too anxious to get Jacoby out of there, man. He was trying too hard. He kind of started getting a little bit predictable after the first round, but he's throwing certain punches that are leaving him a little bit exposed. And I thought he would have to pay for that later on in the fight, which he ended up having to pay for, which was kind of getting him caught in some of the jabs that kept shocking him a little bit. Shakes him up a little bit. He's losing his feet and he's realizing, oh man, this guy can touch me and I better take this seriously. So in his head, he may be thinking, I have to get this guy out of here as fast as possible because if he touches me the wrong way, it can do some damage and I might get out of there. But it also looks like Petrino has to set his feet to be able to strike. He could not swing on the move, and I thought that was a big weakness in this fight. And Jacoby definitely took advantage of that. Every time Jacoby gets Petrino to set his feet, he starts moving right away just to throw his, you know, rhythm off and everything. He never allowed him to really settle into anything, which I thought was impressive. Petrino was swinging for the fences in this fight, but I don't know if that's a good thing because this guy is ripped and he's full of muscles. And when that happens, man, all that muscle causes a lot of energy to drain from your body because you have to feed those muscles energy, especially if you have twitch fiber muscle where you can just gas like Conor McGregor after 2 rounds. But then again, it could explain exactly why he wants to try to get him out of there as quickly as possible. And I'm talking about Petrino, because if that energy runs out, he could be in some serious trouble. So Jacoby was being very careful in this fight, but he also knows that he can be touched. You see it in this fight. And of course, he lost his last outing, so he wants to be very careful and make sure he secures a win in this fight. And Petrino, it's not a joke. Even though he started to slow down a little bit in the second round, he could still touch Jacoby. Going into the third round, I'm not exactly sure how the judges were seeing this, man. Both fighters had 23 punches landed through 2 rounds. And even with the fight looking so even like this, man, no one wants to make a mistake. It's kind of a chess match. But at the same time, I don't know how the judges were scoring this fight. In my eyes, I had it 19-19 through the first 2 rounds. And then in the third round, ends up with a big shocker. You know, I don't think anybody was expecting what happened in the third round. But in my head, after the second round, if the third round went that same way, we might have seen a 50-50 draw on this one because I don't know how else you would score this fight. What's actually crazy is that the crowd started booing these fighters, which I thought was kind of crazy because it was actually not a bad fight. They just had to be strategic. The name of the game is hit and don't be hit. You know, not run into the face of danger and take damage for no reason. Jacoby took a knee to the body and takes most of it on his elbows. However, he blocked it. The very next thing he does, he throws two punches that lays out Petrino completely, knocked him out cold. What was he waiting for this entire fight? I mean, one vicious punch just laid him out. So maybe this was probably part of the strategy to get Petrino tired because of all the muscles and then knock him out in the end. I don't really know what the strategy was, but that's just what it seems like from my perspective. To be honest, I'm kind of curious as to where this came from because he waited too long and he took unnecessary damage throughout the fight before knocking Petrino out. But to be also completely honest, Petrino just kind of looked like he was far too overconfident in this fight, and it was just enough to get him caught in the third round. Even when he landed that knee in his face, he started smiling a little bit and he was like, oh, maybe something else can happen and I can knock this guy out. But the only thing that ended up happening was Petrino got knocked out. Dustin Jacoby better get a $50,000 bonus for this one, man. This was beautiful. Next up, we have Manel versus Bruno Silva. You know, One thing I don't like about Manel is simple fact that he's very cocky. But he backs it up with his fighting style, man. The kid can fight. Nobody can take that away from him. He's very quick and stays very active. You're always in danger when you're around him. And he wants to bait you into attacking him. So he starts doing damage and makes you make mental mistakes, and then he got you. But I think Silva in the third round finally started getting to that point where he started getting a little bit reckless. And he had to go after Manel because he was just sitting there taking pictures while Manel was picking him apart from distance. So in this third round, he's definitely getting a lot more success versus the first two rounds, but at the same time, he had to put himself in danger to get there. So he was getting touched up. He was taking a lot more damage. He started bleeding a little bit from the face, and he was not able to find his way to get into the danger zone and out of the danger zone before he could get touched like Manel. Basically, he just couldn't find it. Manel was just, like I said, picking him apart from distance. Now, there is a controversial kick to almost what looks like Manel hit him in the cup, but at the same time, it kind of looks like his midsection is actually the part that hit him, or that, his toes went up into the stomach and did not really hit the guy in the balls. But it could have caught the cup a little bit, to be completely honest. It's kind of hard to tell from any angle that they caught it on, and I'll show a picture of that here. Regardless of it would have hit his cup or not, in that situation, we've seen many replays and it was still hard to determine what happened. This fight was just going in one direction the entire time. It was pure dominance from Manel Cape. And in all honesty, it probably helped the fight end a little bit quicker so Silva can stop taking unnecessary damage on this one. Manel was able to just melt him down, and the damage was just too much for Silva after a while. So, he ended up being TKO'd. Great performance by Manel. Um, he might be next up for a title shot at 125, but I got to be honest, man. He's sitting over here saying, F this guy, F this guy, F this guy, all these people that he's trying to call out, Kai Kara France. He even said something about Israel Adesanya, which I don't even know why. That's nowhere near your division. But let's get one thing straight. Silva is not Pantoja. And if you think Pantoja is going to be this easy of a fight, you got something else coming for you. It's easy to think that you can beat the best in the division, but remember, Pantoja is the champion for a reason. And I'm not saying that Manel cannot beat Pantoja, but it's going to take a lot more than what he did to Silva for this to happen. Just being quick is not enough because Pantoja is every bit as quick as Manel and even more dangerous on the ground. And if you ask me personally, I think Pantoja is better than Manel. That's just my personal opinion. Next up, we got Cub Swanson against Billy Quarantillo, or Billy Q. Man, everybody thought Cub Swanson would be done and this might be his last fight. But, you got to remember, he's 41 years old. These guys came into the octagon and left everything inside that cage, man. They're coming out here, putting themselves out there. They're putting themselves in danger. Kind of like I was saying earlier, you don't really want to put yourself in too much danger, but these guys did exactly that. They put themselves in all the danger that could be possible to happen in those fights. And one thing about Cub Swanson is that he leaves his hand position straight down, so the opponent cannot see where the punches are coming from. The bad side of that is the hands are not up to protect his face, and his head movement is just not enough sometimes when he gets touched. When he gets touched, he starts moving just a little bit, but his head stays in the center line. And that's very difficult to protect yourself because your hands stay down so you can surprise your opponent, but at the same time, you leave yourself very vulnerable. So this was a very eventful first round. Now, I don't know if the 3 rounds is enough for this fight. That's kind of what I was saying. But when Cubs starts to take hits, you start to see him responding a little differently. But we have to remember he's 41 years old. And after 45 professional fights, man, you're just not the same fighter from the beginning of your career, of course. And Billy Q took some damage in the first round, but he's coming out and he's throwing haymakers in the second round. He starts to control the pace of the fight a little bit. And now Cub was starting to grapple because he's taking too much damage. So the second round turned out to be a dogfight, man. Both guys are okay with taking the damage, and they took it pretty well, it seems like. And neither guy wanted to back down. They are both hurt in this fight, but they're still going after each other. In the third round, Cub comes out and lands a beautiful left hook with a right straight that just knocks Billy Q out. What a fight. I do feel bad for Billy Q, though, being, he's in his hometown of Tampa and he got knocked out there. He wanted to get this win. But Cub Swanson kept saying, people want to make a name off myself. They want to build themselves up off my name. But they got to still keep respect on his name, even though he's 41 years old. And he never confirmed if he will actually retire or not. So we don't actually know what that looks like right now. He did not throw the gloves into the cage, but he did leave us with an anecdote saying that, he told his wife this would be his last fight. But that doesn't really mean anything if he's not leaving the gloves inside the cage. But him being 41 years old, probably one of the oldest fighters, if not the oldest fighter in the UFC right now, I would not be mad at him if he retired, man. He can only keep taking this kind of damage for so much longer. All right, now we got to talk about the main event, Buckley versus Covington. I mean, this is the main fight that people definitely were inside the stadium for, and if you were watching on TV, this is the main fight you were looking forward to as well. Now, I had a couple of weird thoughts coming into this fight from the get go. Buckley had been on a streak lately, man. This guy has been on a fight tear, 5-win streak, and he's very dangerous, man. He can touch you in a lot of different ways, but he comes with a lot of power. Now, Covington is a great fighter. No one can ever take that away from him, but he hasn't been as active. And, he took this fight on short notice as well. So I'm not exactly sure if that was a smart move for him or, you know, what this fight looks like for him right now because his last outing did not look good at all. But we have all seen Buckley, what he's been able to do. Even the last fight he came out, he knocked out Wonder Boy Stephen Thompson. But we cannot forget that Kobe Covington is one guy who definitely has a chin and he can take a lot of hits. He can take a lot of damage. I mean, we've seen proof of that in the Kamaru Usman fights against him. And he doesn't swing to knock you out, but his cardio is definitely his main weapon. When he touches you up, eventually those hits will add up into a really big problem that many people have to deal with. But I think his cardio is the weapon that he had to use in this fight to win. You know, Kobe comes out. He's looking pretty good. He was looking solid. He looked a little slow to me. I don't know why. Maybe it's just ring rust. But he ended up with a cut underneath, or sorry, on top of the right eye, actually, in the very first round, which kind of changed the course of the entire fight. It was not something that I expected to see, but things like that can happen at any moment. And you just take the one wrong hit. In this case, it was an uppercut, and it just happened to cut straight across his right eye, and that blood started definitely bothering him going in his eye. You see him trying to mess with it and take it out, but the ring rust was just too much, man. The only game plan that I could see for Colby was to actually take Buckley into deep waters, maybe into the fourth or fifth round, where Buckley's muscles are just eating up too much of his energy and he wouldn't be able to fight back the way that he actually wants to, and then gas him out and maybe wrestle him out of there, choke him or something. That was the only way that I could really see Colby Covington winning this fight. But twice in the first round, Kobe tried to take Joakim down, and Joakim had great defense and prevented the takedowns. And Buckley is definitely winning the first round. Let's not get this twisted at all. It was pure domination by him, especially after the eye cut. But Buckley, we clearly could see his game plan. He had to keep the fight standing, and he perfectly timed, the right hand at the end of the first round to drop Kobe. But then after the replay came up, you actually notice that it hits Kobe's forearm and just drops him. So he didn't really take damage from that punch. But I think Kobe was okay after that. Obviously he's bothered by his eye with the blood going in there. I know that doesn't feel too good. Buckley was doing a great job with his body punches, though, man. Those right hooks to the body, those were going to pay dividends if it had to go down the distance. And those right hooks definitely gave him a lot of dividends towards the third, even in the second and third round. Buckley was able to explode and get out of being in ground positions while Kobe was trying to wrestle with him just to gas him out a little bit. And Kobe looked kind of discouraged after Buckley was able to stand up. Let's just be honest. That's exactly what happened. And then with the blood that keeps coming out on the eyes, he kept trying to take Buckley to the ground but couldn't do it. When he took Buckley to the ground, he couldn't keep him there. So I wonder what his game plan was from that point on. I can't stand up with this guy and I can't take him to the ground and hold him there. So what is your game plan, And in the second round, it looks like Buckley was starting to slow down a little bit. This is kind of what I mean by having all that muscle, man. It costs a lot of energy. So you're a big guy like that at 170, that'll cost you a little bit. You got to get guys out of there real quick if you want to remain in the fight for a long period of time. So those energy reserves are definitely going to be tested in the deep waters of the later rounds and if the fight goes on. The longer the fight went, I thought the better it was for Colby Covington because of his cardio. Now, after the second round, the doctor came in and said she's not going to let the fight go much longer because of the cut on that right eye. You know, it looked pretty bad for Colby. Now, Joe Kim could just come out in the third round and just attack that right eye. Obviously, Colby won't be able to see the punches coming from that side due to all the damage and the blood. So he could have ended the fight in a TKO. At the beginning of the third round, I had Buckley up 2 rounds to nothing. I mean, it was definitely 20-18, pure domination by him in this entire fight. And the problem is, and then in the third round, what we end up seeing is that Joaquin Buckley's energy just comes back up. Maybe he just gained a lot of confidence because the snap and the punches are coming right back up, but a big mistake made by Colby has Buckley end up full mounting him on his back. Now, Buckley made a mistake that allowed Colby to get ground control, but once again, Buckley was able to get out of that situation and get right back up. So that didn't last long, and he didn't do any damage. The inactivity from the octagon for Colby was just really showing up in a bad way. But Buckley is definitely trying to end this fight in the third round, man. He did not want to be on the ground and just wanted to stand up and do damage so they could end the fight, especially with the cut on Colby's eye. So what did Buckley do? He did what he had to do. He stood up. Ref stopped the fight just temporarily. The doctor checks out Colby's eye, and they had to stop the fight. The doctor even confirmed that Colby may even lose that eye if they kept going and he took more damage on that eye. So it was a good stoppage. No one's complaining about that. I know Colby wanted to keep fighting, but in all honesty, his health might have been more important in that situation because he was being dominated and he was already down 3 rounds anyway. So he had to either choke out Joaquim or knock him out, and I didn't think any of that would happen even if they continued another 2 rounds. But what a great fight night to close out the year, man. This was a great showing. Thank you very much for your time today, guys. Definitely like and subscribe, and we will have much more coming for you. Have a good one.